Tonight, I want to talk about a subject that has to do more with the spirit of the Christian. And I thought what we would do is, over the next several months, is study about some attitudes. Now, of course, this one tonight is a negative, but we won't always notice the negative. There will be positive ones as well. And I believe they fit right into our theme this year, which is the theme of focus. What I want to do this year is focus on myself. And I hope that all Christians would want to do the same thing. So these attitudes are designed just for that. When I was preparing for this lesson, I thought, man, I do not want to be this person. So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to preach this lesson to myself. And I hope that you will do the same. So as we go about these good and bad characteristics, I want you to know, friend, that these are things that I want to preach to me. And I hope that they will benefit me in the coming year, in 2019, and you as well. I'm reminded of a man named Johnny, and he approached the preacher about his brother's death. And Johnny told the preacher, he said, I want you to tell every person in that assembly that my brother was a saint. The preacher knew his brother was not a saint. He didn't know how he was going to get out of this. But Johnny was hard pressed. You know, he said, you better tell them at my brother's funeral that he was a saint. So he got up on the pulpit and he said, look, we all know that this man was very bitter. At the least, he was mean. But compared to his brother Johnny, he was a saint. You know, being bitter is very tough on a person. And as I began to develop this lesson, I thought, you know, it would be so sad for us as God's people to be recognized by the world as a bitter person. So I'm going to strive to do everything I can not to be this individual, and I hope that you can too. Let me give you in the outset of this lesson 3 things. Let's go to Colossians chapter 3. What are some things that can happen when I have a bitter spirit? Number 1, it will destroy my marriage. It's interesting to me what the needs of a woman is and how God addresses these needs. And in Colossians chapter 3 and verse 19, he said, husbands, love your wives. Notice, do not be bitter against them. Why would God address husbands in that fashion? Why would he not say to wives, don't be bitter against your husbands? Well, because the needs of a man and the needs of a woman are different. God knows that the woman needs to be loved and to feel that love from her husband. Bitterness, number 1, will destroy homes. Bitterness, number 2, will destroy churches. James addressed the brethren from his own writing, and he said, speak not evil one of another, brethren. Well, why? Because bitterness, it will destroy homes, and it will destroy churches. I'm reminded of a man, he said, you know, busybodies and busy bees have something in common, and it is a stinger. I have seen, and you have seen, churches all over the United States who are closing their doors, not because of a doctrinal error, not because, you know, of this or that, but probably mostly because of this, what we're talking about tonight. Bitterness is dangerous. I'll give you 2 more in the outset of this lesson. In Proverbs chapter 20 and verse 3, you can just write this in your margin. The Bible says, it is an honor for a man to cease from strife, but every fool will be meddling. Friend, I want to ask myself tonight, I want you to ask yourself, do you consider a person who tries to correct the wrongs of all the people around you? Now, preachers get a bad reputation for this, and it's not always the truth. Preachers have to preach the truth no matter what people are feeling, but I want to tell you right now that my motives for preaching the gospel are never to reveal people's wrongs. And I'll tell you this right now, I lose sleep sometimes over lessons that I know are going to hurt people's feelings. It anguishes me in my spirit, and I'll tell you the day that it stops doing that, I need to quit preaching. It's not my job to be part of people's business, and neither is it for other people. The Bible says bitter people are the ones who usually are like that. 1 Peter chapter 4 and verse 15, he said, "Let none of you suffer as a murderer, as a thief, as an evildoer, or as a busybody in other men's matters." So when I was studying for this, I thought, man, this is huge. I could damage the church by a bitter spirit. I could damage my home by a bitter spirit. I don't know of anyone right now who would fit this description in this room. At least I hope I don't. But I pray I would never be that person. And I hope that you feel the same way about yourself. So let's go to our text tonight, Hebrews chapter 12, verses 14 and 15. Let's talk about the meaning of what we're discussing here today. What is the meaning of this bitterness? I want to give you several things. We'll talk about the germination of this spirit, the devastation of this spirit, and the eradication of this bitter spirit. Somebody said that bitter people never make people better. That is true. They're usually wrapped up in themselves. The reason why they correct other people so much is because they're not happy with themselves. So friend, don't take it personal if you ever meet a person like this. It usually does not have anything to do with you. Let's begin. Hebrews chapter 12, 14 and 15, the Bible says, "Follow peace with all men and holiness, without which no man shall see the Lord. Looking diligently, lest any man fail of the grace of God, lest any root of bitterness springing up trouble you, and thereby many be defiled." When I looked at this word for bitterness, it literally is translated and can be translated poison. And I thought to myself, that's really what it is. So tonight, I want to tell you tonight that if I have ever seemed bitter towards you, I am so sorry. I do not want to be bitter toward anyone. And I know that I'm not going to be perfect in this area. Most likely you are not either. But I'll tell you, I saw the seriousness of what this man is in this lesson. And I've made a decision. I'm not going to be him. I hope that you and I both will make that decision tonight. Let's talk about first the germination of this bitter spirit. How does it begin? Let's go all the way back to the book of Genesis chapter 4. And it's interesting to me that you'll find this very early on. Adam and Eve were in the garden, they sinned, and then of course they were expelled from the Garden of Eden. And then you have twins, or brothers, I wouldn't call them twins, brothers, Cain and Abel. And one of them killed his brother. Why is that? Because the germination of bitterness first seeks to cripple someone. Genesis chapter 4 and verse 4 and 5. I'm going to give you 3 of these germination principles. The first one, it seeks to cripple someone. The Bible says this, "In the process of time, it came to pass that Cain brought the fruit of the ground as an offering unto the Lord. And Abel also, he brought the firstlings of his flock and the fat thereof. And God had respect unto Abel and his offering, but to Cain and to his offering he did not have respect. And Cain was wroth," the Bible said, "and his countenance fell." He had this smoldering thing within him that began, and he said, you know what? I'll just kill him. That'll get rid of all my problem if I just get rid of this person. Well, bitterness seeks to cripple someone. Most likely, in this audience tonight, there's probably not anyone that would fit this description. At least I hope not. We don't want to go about as God's people trying to cripple others. But I will tell you this, it can go too far. Jose Canseco wrote a book one time, and it wasn't a good one. You see, at one time, Jose Canseco was a famous baseball player. How many of you remember him, by the way? When I was a child, he was very, very popular. But later on in life, I never heard anything about him, and I thought, I wonder what happened to him. And I watched a documentary one time, and he sat in front of the camera, and he said, I wrote a book. It was about my steroid use, and I got caught. And in that book, I exposed many, many other people in the Major League Baseball who were using steroids, and I knew they were. He hung his head and said that was the biggest mistake I ever made in my life. Because at that time, he was moneyless. His family had left him. And in his bitterness, friend, he lashed out, and it crippled him when he was trying to cripple other people. Bitterness will do that. He said, I wish I had not written the book. The germination, number one, it seeks to cripple. Now, this one hits a little closer to home. Let's go to Ephesians chapter 6. Not only does it seek to cripple, but it seeks to criticize. Now, criticism's not always bad, and I'm open to criticism most of the time. But I don't like for people to boss me around for no reason and try to get me to do things that weren't my idea just because they think that's what I need to be doing. Criticism can be dangerous. It can hurt friendships. It can hurt families. It can hurt members of the church. And here's what I thought to myself. I said, you know what? Here's what I want to do. I want to look at every person like Ephesians 6. When the Bible said, honor your father and your mother. For this is the first commandment with promise. And he continues and he said, fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Would I criticize my child the way that I criticize other people? Most likely not. So when I was sitting down, I was reading about this, I thought, I want to begin seeing people like I see my own family. Because at home, I want to be fair to my children. I don't want to be the dad who walks around, putting their thumb on people and saying, always complaining all the time. No, I want to be fair with my children. And at night when I kiss them to bed, I want to look them in the face and say, I'm so proud of you. You make me and your mama proud. And I want to thank you for what you're doing. I thought, what if I saw every person like when I kiss my children goodnight? It would take away the spirit of bitterness in my heart. I know that. Because bitterness seeks to cripple. Bitterness seeks to criticize. Number 3. Bitterness seeks to cast aside. I thought about the parable of the Good Samaritan in Luke chapter 10. When this man was beaten, left half dead, the old saying goes, you don't kick a man while he's on the ground. I'll be real frank with you sometimes. Preachers get that a lot. I'm not complaining. I'm just letting you know that's just the nature of the beast. And Cody can understand that as well. He's a youth minister. Sometimes we already feel down, A good pat on the back is what we need. And I'll tell you this, friend, that the man who was left half dead, his own flesh and blood came through. And I can just picture him now. He's like reaching out for help, He said, ooh, man. Bible says he passed by on the other side. And another one came. He wasn't the only one. There was another one that came, and I can just picture him now. He's beaten, left half dead. He's just reaching out for someone to help him. He can't even talk. And he left him. Why? Because bitterness seeks to cast aside. The danger of this germination is just like a poison. So now you can see why. Now you can see why we don't want to be this person, right? Let's move on, number 2. The devastation. What you see on the screen is from the war in Syria. Now, there are probably some valid reasons why this war took place. But it doesn't soften the picture any. This once was a thriving area. This was like, all people were going to town. They're going to get groceries, cars. And now it's a war zone. A ghost town. It's complete devastation. If you look there in your text, I want to pick out some words here. Let's go back to Hebrews chapter 12. Hebrews chapter 12, verses 14 and 15. Now what I'm going to do is talk about the devastation. I'm talking about the root and the fruit. Okay, let's see. We've talked about the germination process. So when it forms a root, what does it do? Look there, if you will, in verse 15. He said this, "Follow peace with all men and holiness, without which no man shall see the Lord, looking diligently lest any man fail of the grace of God, and the root of bitterness springing up." Now what did it do? He said it will trouble you. I'm reminded of a story about an elder. It's a true story. His daughter was murdered by her husband. He didn't know what to do for a long time. He was lost, His daughter was killed. He couldn't believe it. He was an elder in the church for all these years, and how does this happen to somebody like that? He couldn't stand his son-in-law, couldn't even stand to look at him. For years, it just ate him alive. Finally, he said, "I'm going to go visit him in jail." And he did. He taught him the Bible and he baptized him. His own murderous son-in-law who killed his daughter, he taught him the Bible and he baptized him. When I think about that story, I don't know how he did that. But I do know why. He had to get rid of that root that was troubling him his whole life. He had to find some way of forgiveness, He said, because this is going to go on and on. Now, let me give you 3 things that we're thinking about here in this devastation. A lot of times, if a person is easily hid, they may be bitter. If you do not like to be around people, you don't have many friends. Friend, that doesn't mean you just like to be alone. I like to be alone. But it may mean we have a bitter spirit. Number 2, easily offended. A person who wears their feelings on their sleeve all the time could be bitter. Number 3, he has an unforgiving spirit. He's not merciful at all. In fact, he looks for ways to condemn other people. So that's the root, He said, if this root springs up, it troubles you. But what's the fruit of it? The next phrase, what happens to many others? They will be defiled. It will begin to spread. What are some characteristics? The person constantly tries to correct other people. The person constantly holds a grudge. These things are fruits of this type of thing. Let's give some emotions and let's give some other characteristics. All right, I'm going to give you this pretty quickly, and then we'll move on to our last point of eradicating the spirit of bitterness. But you could write this in your margin. How does this affect me? Number 1, it will always affect me physically. The Bible says, "He who has friends, he must show himself to be friendly." A bitter person usually does not have many friends. How does it affect me emotionally? The Bible says, "Follow peace with all men." A guy like this or a woman like this does not seek peace very often. It's just the nature of the beast. How does it affect me spiritually? The Bible says, "Be ye angry and do not sin, and let not the sun go down upon your wrath." You see, it affects every inch of who we are if this is not the case. I want to share this with you. Let's go to Ephesians chapter 4. And while you're turning there, you remember that God taught the basis of love, and all the characteristics of it. Now, bitterness, of course, is the opposite of love. And for another study, we'll talk about love, but I want you to notice that in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, and I think it's about verse 8, it says, "Love thinks no evil." Now, I'm just curious to know, I probably should have done this ahead of time, I'm just curious to know what some of your modern translations are saying when it says, "Love thinks no evil." Because you read it in the King James and you could think that, well, a person who loves does not think an evil thought, which could be true. The principle would apply. But literally, what does it mean? Love does not keep account of wrongdoing. It thinks the best about every person, no matter who they are. Just because so-and-so or so-and-so said this or that, it always thinks the best under every circumstance. Now, that's hard to do. It's real hard to do. And not one of those characteristics in 1 Corinthians 13 is easy. And that one, of course, is difficult. Let's notice this, Ephesians 4 and verse 31. I want to give you a step-up effect here. So what we have is, he says, let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking be put away from among you with all malice. And be ye kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God for Christ's sakes hath forgiven you. So as we talk about how this affects us all emotionally, spiritually, all these things, you'll notice where it began. Bitterness. This is from within. But then it keeps going. It develops into something a little more smoldering. This afternoon for lunch, I went home and lit the grill. And, after a while, you come back and those coals are still there. That's the idea. This wrath is still lit. Okay? Still smoldering. In fact, you look at the definition here, it literally means hot or smoldering. Then you go to the next one, anger. This is an outward expression. It's like, okay, it's on his face now. I see this guy, he's ready to punch somebody. Then clamor. Clamor literally means an outcry. And malice, a desire to hurt. How many of you had brothers and sisters growing up? Now, I had two brothers. I had an older brother and a younger brother, so that was like double terror. Okay. It's interesting, siblings, how we do. Even my children, they fuss and fight and all that. And I'm just glad that we all decide, hey, we're still family, we're going to make up. But something about children living in the house together, as me and my brothers, when we grow up, I can look back and think there were some really bad moments. Some real bad ones. And it started with something small. Some words were exchanged and it got a little heated, and then somebody maybe pushed another one, and it was downhill from there. It always starts small. That's sort of the idea of what we're talking about tonight. In Littleton, Colorado, there were two young boys. This was the first school shooting I ever heard about. Two young boys walked into a school and started shooting people. And I guess I was probably pretty young. I guess I was a young teenager or so. Never heard of anything like that in my life. I couldn't believe it. I was shocked. But we hear about it more and more today, don't we? When I first moved to Meridian, there was a man at Lockheed Martin who went home on his lunch break and got a shotgun, and he came back and he started killing people. I couldn't believe it. You just don't hear about stuff like that. You're like, man, I grew up and, all of a sudden we start hearing about these crazy things happen. Well, it's because people have been taught that they don't have to control their anger. Friend, God says we need to eradicate bitterness. This is my favorite part of the lesson. I know a lot of that is a shock, but at any rate, the Bible does teach on this issue. Let's go to Psalm 139. I want to give you three things. How do I eradicate bitterness when it comes in my heart? Number one, God says, let me reveal it. Let God reveal it. It's not always easy to do, I've got to really do some soul searching then and ask myself, all right, how am I going to allow God to fix this situation? Well, Psalm 139 and verse 23, David, he had something different going on, but the principle applies. He said, search me, O God. Try my reins and my heart. Friend, that's the hardest thing to do. I can imagine that's probably why people in the world do not want to become Christians, because then they've got a lot of stuff to face. It's not easy being a Christian. There are a lot of times when I have to sit down and look into God's mirror and I think, man, I have missed it. It's not easy to do. But this writer, he said, Lord, I want you to fix me and make me the man that I'm supposed to be. He said, see if there's any wicked way in me and lead me into the way everlasting. I'm reminded of some sayings that we see from time to time. Somebody said, promote world peace and use your turn signal. There's a lot of things that I get frustrated about, little things, I guess, but I'll tell you, that may be one good one. If I'm waiting to turn and this guy turns in, doesn't use his turn signal, I'm like, well, there goes my opportunity to turn, you know. Thanks for using your blinker. Someone else said, sometimes I wake up grumpy, but other times I just let him sleep. That's probably me, you know. My mom for Christmas, you know, she got me some pajama pants. You know who was on them? The Grinch. I wore those the other day, by the way. Let God reveal it. Number 2. This is not easy either. Let grace remove it. It's interesting in your text there in Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 15. He said, lest any man fail of the grace of God, and the root of bitterness springs up and troubles you. This spirit can cause me to miss heaven. And God says, I want to take it. I want to remove it. Well, that too is not an easy thing. James chapter 1 and verse 19 is an application for this. And he said, wherefore, beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath. He said, for the wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God. Let grace remove it. Let God reveal it. Number 3, and finally, as we close, let good replace it. The hardest thing in the world to me is the subject when Jesus said to love your enemies and do good to them that hate you. I'll tell you, I cannot stand the thought of someone hating me for no reason. I can't tell you how many times I've laid awake looking at the ceiling thinking about that principle. But a couple of years ago, probably maybe a year and a half or something like that, I just thought in my own mind, you know what, I'm going to worry myself to death over this. I cannot make people like me. And I thought, you know what, why do I even care? I care too much about what people think. You know, my wife told me, she said, you need to quit caring about what people think of you. I can't help it. I know I don't need to. But I'll be honest with you. I want to love people because, especially if they're God's people. So tonight, when you think about bitterness, does it affect your marriage? Does it affect your church? Does it affect you? Friend, I hope that's the lesson tonight that you receive. God says these characteristics will either hurt us or they will help us. So I hope in the study of all these that we will benefit from them. And tonight, Jesus says you can put away every bitter thought right now if you obey the gospel. If you've never done that, friend, I want to tell you, you're in a dangerous place. Because you could leave here tonight, whether you're bitter or not, and if you die, you would be lost. God says, go into all the world, preach the gospel to every creature. He that believeth and is baptized shall be saved. He that believeth not shall be damned. That is a huge motivator for us to do what God said. Are you willing to meet the terms? I hope that you'll come tonight and put away everything in your life that is not what God says it is. And you say, I'm ready to obey the gospel right now. Will you come as we stand, as we sing?